Popcast. Well done, Ryan. Well done.
Had to happen. One day.
Really ripped the Band-Aid off.
But yeah, it's that it started kind of having a lot more sort of corporate interest coming in as kind of gatekeepers or as stewards of the subculture. And at the same time, I got into it really just before Nirvana, but also largely through Nirvana, through Kurt Cobain and him shouting out like the Raincoats and Daniel Johnston and all these sort of left of center indie artists. And so I valued that as something that was really pure. And I also had a sense of DIY culture to it. This idea.
Stop it if you want to see something.
All right. Look, I don't think there's such a thing as a musician, someone who chooses to put their art in front of people and that is pure. I hate it when critics, not just a musician, I think anyone who sells their things, that's who is giving, maybe if you are simply performing without even like a busk. Like when you are choosing to put your art in front of people or your craft, whatever it is, you are not pure. When I hear that kind of talk, it makes my blood boil. That it's an arrogant perspective that, hey, there are these people who, yes, they are working for money. I know Daniel Johnston, yes, it was lo-fi. I liked some of it, and some of it's okay. Some of it, I was like, what is this? But this was not the. There is this thing among the critical class who believe that when people do art of or things just broadly, that they do them for altruistic reasons.
Well, because critics are not artists. So there's a couple things that happen there. Number one, they don't have enough appreciation for what it takes to create things, so they casually, offhandedly slag and disparage artist choices, like yuck, 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 yuck. That's the one thing. Number two, they have what's the word I'm looking for? On the flip side of that, they also project too much importance and exaltation onto artists, and they want artists to live up to their expectations as they put them on a pedestal, which is why they feel entitled to tear them off that pedestal. They can't relate. They can't put themselves in the shoes of, okay, this is just a creative person. And I would agree with you, because even when busking, you're still putting your work out there for some recompense of approval or approbation.
Yeah, of course.
But where I would say, in fairness to Schreiber, there's a continuum with that. Like, it's not everybody's in it for the same to the same extent. Like, some people just dive in wanting to be stars and wanting to be super famous and super rich and have there's music hit everywhere. And some people, are in the middle, and some people are just like, well, I'll just make art, and whatever it does, it does. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think the word pure, though, I think you're right to zero in on that, because it's almost turning someone into a saint, and we don't know. Yeah. Because I've interviewed certain bands, and they're thought of as these paragons of independent virtue, and I've had them say, no, we totally would have wanted to sell 1 million records,
without a doubt. I think that I think if anyone had the choice, they would do that. Whether they say that in an interview or they say that but I think if you were alone in a bar with Daniel Johnston or Johnston, I think it is, and or someone like the guy from Neutral Milk Hotel, mm-hmm. comes to mind. I forget his
Aaron.
His name.
Is his name Aaron?
I think his name's Aaron. Or one of my favorite groups, Him. They were not. They weren't giant stars until their and they're still not giant stars, but their
Never
music
heard of
didn't
them.
their music didn't hit until they were in a commercial.
Mm.
Like no one paid attention to them until insurance companies started using a couple of their songs. So if you were in a bar with them one-on-one and you had a couple in them, I think they would honestly tell you, hey, look, we would prefer that more people see our stuff and we become stars. Maybe not need to be Madonna or Taylor Swift or Beyonce or whoever, but I think people would rather see their stuff than people not see their stuff.
Well, yes, but I think you're conflating. Yes. Here's how I put it to you. I think if most artists had the chance, I mean, I do think there are artists who are averse to being super famous. Maybe they've either convinced themselves that they shouldn't want that, or they have a sort of inner guiding emotional sense that they have an aversion to it. And I do think there are people like that. And the proof is that there are people who sabotage their deals once they get them, and they shrink away from that.
I agree.
So I think there are people who sense that they would be uncomfortable under those circumstances. And I do find that quite admirable. Here's how I would
rare as well.
Here's how I would put how I would put it and go just a little bit more focused on what you're saying. Think if you got people in a bar and said, okay, listen, it's a choice where millions of people will know you or nobody will know you. Most artists would take the millions. But if you said, here's a choice between millions and millions and being the biggest thing versus having a career where enough people like you and it's manageable and you still get to be a human being, I think most artists, some would pick no, I just want to be big. I just want to be big. I do think there's quite a few artists that be like, just give me the modest existence where people know me. We confuse recognition for our art with hitting it big. They're not necessarily always the same thing.
It's the Jay-Z line. There's levels to this.
Yes.
You don't necessarily in order to be a successful hip hop act, you don't need to be Jay-Z. You don't need to be Nas. You don't need to be Drake. You don't need to be J. Cole or who am I thinking? Or DaBaby. You can be any of them, and you're at a slightly different level. You could be an independent act. Independent. Moses Rockwell is local, right? So you could be or Griselda is a great example. Griselda is not gigantic. Griselda they're out of Buffalo. They kept control of their IP. They've created their own record company. They're independent, and they're making enough. And they've been able to make what they want, how they want, and reach their fans.
And also, that reminds me, it's like what MC Hammer said. Why should I sign a deal where I'm making $1 per album I sell when I can sell them out of the back of my Jeep and keep all the profit?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there is some truth to that, and especially in this era, where it doesn't take a lot to get on Spotify and Apple Music. Essentially, you could just use TuneCore and you could just be on those platforms, and your deal is a lot better if you can generate the interest. That's the thing. I think most people don't have the metal within them to generate the kind of interest and following that it takes to make that kind of venture profitable. That's why I would say that almost everybody would take the record deal, ideally a short-term record deal, to at least get the exposure.
I think where I would agree with you is that just about everybody would be tempted. Would at the very least be tempted.
You don't think they take it?
No, I think most people would take it, but even the people that we're talking about who have this sense of resistance would have to go home and think about it. It's the rare person who's just going to walk out of that room and go, "No, thanks."
Yeah.
So
very rare. Okay.